Hello and welcome back. So we are still looking at SQL injection, but this time we're looking at it from the get variable. So how to inject using the URL in short. So the link to this code is in the description if you want to type along as well, but you can otherwise just watch. So on the home page, I have the featured posts here, and if I click on read more, I go to a single post. And the URL here is post ID is equal to 4. So pretty standard stuff where I'm getting a post using a specific ID. But the important thing is that I'm constructing a query on the other side using this ID that was supplied, but I'm not sanitizing that data. I'm simply trusting that data will be a valid number and it's going to work out. So let's see the question, how this is working. So if I go to post.php here, I'll go down, and what it does is it checks if the get variable is set and the ID in particular, and then uses a function called getOnePost to get the post using that ID. So this getOne function is inside the post class. So let's check that out using the functions.php. And inside the post class, sure enough, here's the function getOne, and it takes in an ID, and then it says select all from posts where ID is equal to ID, limit 1. Well, pretty standard stuff. But let's see what somebody can do with this, because especially that we are not checking to see what data is contained here before we send it to the database. So what I will do here is just echo the query so that we can see what's actually happening internally, like that. And let's go back to the page. So I'll refresh this, and this is the query that brings up this result. But what I can do is I can change this from a number to make it to add some more text to be part of the query. For example, here I can just say order by 1, like that. So I still get this result, which tells me that this website is vulnerable to SQL injection. Now, order by 1 means order by the first column. So if, for example, I put 100 at the end, because column 100 doesn't exist, it's not going to bring anything. So I can just keep bringing down the number. Let me bring it down to 7. It still doesn't work. Let me bring it down to 6. It doesn't work. Let me bring it down to 4. It works. Good. What about 5? It doesn't work. So 4 is the limit, right? So it means I have 4 columns in this table. Well and good. But I'm not interested in this table. I want to see a different table. I want to see different information. So what I can do instead here on order by, now that I know that we have 4 columns here, I can use a union statement. So what I will do here is I'll say ID is equal to 4, and then just say and 0, like this. Now before I do that, I can just say union, like this, union select, and then I know that there are 4 columns, right? So I just put 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, hit enter. Okay, so it doesn't look like I've done anything special here, but what's happening is that it got 2 results but only returned 1. This union select worked because I can see there's a result here, and the reason I'm adding these is because the union requires that I use the same number of columns here and the columns in here. Now because I know that the columns are 4 here, that's why I've put 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I don't want it to return this result. I want to get the union. So what I will do here on the 4 is just say and 0, just to make the first query invalid. So now look what has happened. I've gotten a different result. So I have a result with these columns here. Now in these columns I have 2, I have 3, because this is what I've supplied here. Okay, these are just placeholders. So I can change the data. Now I know that in here, number 3, this is where I can see the most information, because this is where the post itself is returned. So that's why I put numbers, so I can identify these. So instead I'll change this here. I'll just type user, like that. Up here on number 3, I'll type user and brackets, and then hit enter. So now look what has happened. It now tells me the user of this database. So if, for example, I want to know the version of this database, I'll just type version. So this is my database, right? So I'm getting information that I'm not supposed to get from this. Now I can even do more things than this. For example, here on the version 4, instead of doing that, I can read a file from this thing, because from the server. Now, because if, for example, you combine this with error reporting, if the error reporting is on this website, it means I would have seen the file structure of this website, because when I get an error, it tells me exactly where the file is that has caused an error. So that is the file path. So at least I get an idea of the path of this server. So if I have that information, what I can do is read a very specific file. Now, it may come as a surprise to you, but you can read files from MySQL. So in there, I can just say load file. I can say load underscore file. I hope that's the correct. I rarely use these things. So I'll just say c XAMPP, because that's where my file is. PHP, sorry, PHP / php.ini, because that's the most important file in here, right? So if I do that, you see, now my php.ini file is being displayed on the screen here. So I can just copy this and read it step by step to see how this server is configured. And this is going to help me to do even more damage. Now, believe it or not, sometimes you can actually save files through the MySQL query like that. You can just say into file, I think that's the command or something. You can have a string and save it into the file. So somebody can save the PHP info function, for example, or they can start running queries directly from a file that is now on your server. So there's a lot, as you can see, there's a lot that can be done just from an SQL injection like this. So this is why it's very important to sanitize your data that you receive from the user. Otherwise, you'll be in problems like this. So how do we protect ourselves from such a thing? So for starters, because we are expecting an ID, let's make sure that we get a number. So let me come back here and remove this. Maybe I'll leave that there. So what I can do here is just make sure that the ID is a number. So if it's an integer that I'm expecting, I can just cast it as an int like this. So very simple, very straightforward. No hassle, no bustle there. Let's come back here, refresh. Okay, so as you can see now, I'm expecting an integer. So regardless what's typed here, it just gets the first number there and returns this. So just by doing that, this whole attack has failed. A second way is to check if it's numeric. If it's not an integer you're expecting, but maybe a float, a number, you can cast it depending on what you are expecting there. So that's one way to do it. The second way is to put add slashes, like I had said. So you can say add slashes, like so. Now add slashes wouldn't do much. Let's see if it works at all. So let's refresh. Now it didn't load the file here because we did add slashes. As you can see, these slashes are here, so they successfully foiled this plan, but it didn't work as well. What you could do instead with add slashes is put quotes there, like so. So that's a second layer of protection. That way, if you put quotes, this is no longer part of the SQL, but part of the query, the value that is being queried. So as you can see now, ID is equal to 4. So the whole thing is inside this quote there up to this point. So as you can see, it still reads the data quite nicely without having to do any funny business. So that's the second way to do it. And then the third way to do it is to add prepared statements. So to use prepared statements to read from the database. So we're going to do prepared statements in a later video and see how that is done. But these are very simple, basic things you can do to make sure that what you are getting is what you intend. So I much rather like this method like that. Simple and straightforward. Okay, so everything else is trimmed except for the number. All right, so I hope you've learned something and seen how a website can be hacked using such a system. So I'll see you in the next video.